everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, May 4th of 2025. Now, I had a really fun week full of thoughtful journaling and conversations with people and just some really fun things that I'm excited to bring to you today as we head into the beautiful month of May. My husband always calls May the month of Jane, because it's our anniversary, it's my birthday, and it's Mother's Day, all within the first 2 weeks of May. So May is always a super fun month for me because I get spoiled by my family, and I've really come to look at it as such a beautiful time because it's spring. And a really fun thing is I was actually born on Mother's Day. So even though my mom's been now gone for more than 10 years, every few years my birthday rolls around on a Mother's Day, and it's just been a really beautiful time of year for me to celebrate being born, being a mother, and all those things. So here we are in May of 2025. So some really interesting things came in, and I'm just going to go through some of the random thoughts that came in this week. I did have some really thoughtful, a little bit heartfelt, heartbreaking kind of emails come in this week from my Sunday message last week on love teachers, because we are surrounded by people who are teaching us to stay in a place of love, regardless of what comes at us, right? So what I wrote is this: the message is really simple, and I'm going to kind of skip around because I wrote some of this stuff. It's kind of personal, but hopefully it comes off as coherent and makes some sense. So the message is really simple. Ideas and downloads will come in. I think this will relate to everyone. And then I wrote this: my higher self is talking to me. You are the vessel they are birthed in. So these ideas, these downloads, they come for all of us, and we are the vessel that they're birthed in. Okay. You are the action taker. And you know how to get shit done. Excuse my language there. Many of my love teachers are there to keep me humble and on track. And I wrote that because I've thought in the last year and a half, in particular, the people that have been in my life, the situations that have happened, I can say for a fact that I know these are there to keep me on track and humble. You know, I think we all sometimes get caught up in our ego, and we need to be brought down to earth a little bit, and not in a bad way that devastates us and makes us a victim, but in a way that actually reminds us of why we're here. So I want to read this part again. The message is really simple. Ideas and downloads come in. You are the vessel they are birthed in. You are the action taker. You know how to get stuff done. Many of my love teachers are here to keep me humble and on track. And then I wrote off to the side, be a smart risk taker. So when you take risks, when you get these ideas and downloads, be smart. You know, we can still get hurt in this matrix. We can get hurt financially, we can get hurt physically, we can get hurt in different relationships. We can still get hurt in this matrix. So we need to be smart. We need to be smart, very smart risk takers. And then I actually spent some time writing. That spurred in me a big list. I wrote, I am grateful for, and then I wrote down all my love, what I would consider love teachers. But I also, these were people who have stayed in a place of love, and they just taught me that there's people out there who are just pure love in your life. So this was a gratitude list of all the people that I'm grateful for. They haven't done anything to me or given me situations where I have to look at them as a teacher and to remind me. These have just been supportive people. So I think if you have been caught in some of the really tough stuff with love teachers and people that have maybe their journey is different than yours, and they've hurt your feelings or whatever it is, write down a list of all the people that you're grateful for who have just been there for you. And I think you might be surprised. And I took this back really far. You know, I took this back to as far as I could remember and even some of my high school friends. And it was a really beautiful reminder of all the people in my life who teach me that love is just part of who they are, and who they've been a part of my life just as a person who loves me, and I get unconditional love from them. So that was a really nice reminder. Sometimes we need to stay in that place of gratitude, right? So then I wrote this: don't be attached to outcomes. They are what they are. You know, there are situations that happen for all of us, and sometimes they get dragged out, and we make assumptions, and we make predictions, and we lose sleep, and we as modern humans, we want certainty. We want to know. We want to have things that need to be wrapped up, and we want to have the best outcome. So don't be attached to the outcomes. They are what they are. So I'm not saying don't take action, but this is just something that popped in on my journaling. Stay kind to your love teachers. They are everywhere. And this came in through the week just because as more people responded to me on email about my message last Sunday than did on the comments underneath the video, because I think this is hitting really close to people's hearts. These love teachers that hurt us, and we can choose to let them hurt us or not. And it doesn't mean hardening your heart. It's looking at it all differently. So stay kind to your love teachers. They are everywhere. And then this: stay quiet and stay private. Most people in your life are not prepared and can't handle your growth or your learning, and it's okay. It's how it's supposed to be. I have really learned. I am such an oversharer with my sisters and my friends and different people in my life. I get so excited about something I'm hearing, or I do something cool or new, or I find out, and I overshare. And I've always been this way. But the last while, I've really learned that I need to stay quiet and stay private. It's more important for me to do that. Most people in your life are not prepared and can't handle your growth or learning. You know, look at it that way. This is something that you get to keep to yourself. You know, regardless of how much I'm out there and on this video, and I do a ton of podcasts, and you know, I'm a very social person. I am a very private person. So there's a difference between being social and being private. And I've become a lot more private, which I think is important for someone like me, who's trusting of everyone. And I put myself out there to the point where sometimes I do things that come back to bite me. And you might be able to relate to that. So the solitude and going within is where the growth is. It's where the brilliance lies. You are coming home to you. It's nice there. Very nice. That was a really beautiful moment. This little bit of journaling, actually, after I wrote that, it made me get teary-eyed. It made me really grateful for the insights. And then I wrote this, like after I had my moment of just gratitude about that coming in, I wrote, now is the time to challenge your fitness and level up. You know, I've had these thoughts drop into me really strong that I'm going to live to be really, really old. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know when it's my time to go. But it's like, okay, I need to really dial up my fitness. You know, my nutrition is pretty good. Of course, it could always be better, but I also believe that we're here to enjoy, and our taste and smell the things when we smell good food, and this is part of why we're here too. So I think you really start to realize as you get older that your physical fitness is one of the most precious things that you have. And being able to not just climb a mountain, which is what I love, but getting in and out of my car with some heavy groceries, or you know, doing different things. Like I just learned about a farmer's carry, where you hold a couple of heavy dumbbells and you just walk with them, and you should be able to do a certain percentage of your body weight for 60 seconds. So there's some things that I've just kind of have been on my radar, and so then I wrote, challenge. Now is the time to challenge your fitness and level up, which I really love that. So then I wrote this: every human just wants to be seen, really seen. Even a little bit of real attention is powerful, meaningful, and life-changing. You know, I think that that's kind of what a lot of this stuff boils down to, especially when we go back to that love teacher thing. You know, this hit a serious nerve with people, or just it hit a tender place in their heart, if I will say, because they tend to do that. With what I just, described about my sister last week, this hits a tender place in our heart when it's someone that we love. And sometimes it might be your own grown child who, you gave birth to, or you raised, or whatever. These hit a tender place in us. Every human just wants to be seen, really seen. Even a little bit of real attention is powerful, meaningful, and life-changing. And here's the thing, we can give that to other people. And if we don't get it, we can at least set an example. We can show what we're after, we can show and be that. I know that when I do that to a person close in my life, they reciprocate. It comes back because you're modeling an example. And if it doesn't come back, you don't need to take it personal, right? So, just so many things. And then, then basically I had this really great, I listened to this podcast of Catherine Austin Fitts. She's been a person I've been following for a long time. I love her stuff. She's brilliant and smart. And if you've never heard of her, I'll put a link to the podcast interview that I watched with her at the beginning of this week. And it really spurred something in me that modeled the idea for the rest of my journaling for this week, because what she talked about she's an economic person. She's extremely, extremely smart. And she talked about, as we walk through these times, this spiritual war, we need to learn the art of amusement. We need to be amused by some of these things. And I'm not saying that we should just be amused by it all and not be proactive and take action with all the stuff. But it really spurred some really cool thoughts that I had this idea that ended up being 12 things. So these are 12 ideas that I'm just going to just finish out this Sunday message of love with, because this, and the link to this interview, I think you'll find it really, really fascinating. And if you've never heard of her, I would suggest that you watch this video and look her stuff up, because I've been following her now for probably 4 or 5 years. I found her during the pandemic, and I'm grateful because she drops some brilliant knowledge. She's a beautifully spiritual person. She's a person I would love to have as a friend, and because she's just that person. So I think you will love her if you haven't heard of her. So the first thing that came through with this great idea of being amused through it all is this: we are living through a massive global shift. Okay, nothing is untouched. We need to remember that every system is being restructured. Okay. And it's not I don't believe this is out of punishment. I believe that this is a shift. This is a time for a shift. And what this is supposed to do is bring us back into alignment, right? With the things that we know are true. All right? What we used to do no longer makes sense in so many areas, and that's okay. Okay, we're not going backward. What I feel like is happening is we're evolving. So here's a couple of questions to ask yourself, and this would be a great thing to journal on this week. What have I outgrown that I am still clinging to? There's things for all of us, right? And then here's a second question. What am I pretending? Where am I pretending that things are normal when they are clearly not normal? What things am I pretending? Oh, this is just normal. What's happening here in the world is normal. Ask yourself that, and then once you land on some answers and write some answers down, think, okay, awesome, amazing. We get to be amused by the old thought processes rather than bothered by them and triggered by them, right? Okay, so then the second thing here is that since 2020, this awakening has accelerated. And for that, I will tell you, I am so grateful. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. Because I grew up with parents, and a dad especially, who was right on top of all of this stuff. We were doing things and learning things about the Federal Reserve and the different, like all the stuff when we were growing up. So of course, when 2020 hit, it was like, oh, here we go. And to me, this was something that has accelerated the Great Awakening. For that, we can be so grateful and so happy about. So this is the thing, this idea of this acceleration. This isn't some woo-woo thing. This is what I like to say is lived experience. We are here living this experience. We're watching it. You know, the people who still don't see it, there might be a time when they're bonked over the head, or they might not. They might not ever see it. More and more people are questioning, challenging, and waking up from the trance of how things used to be. You know, one of my dear friends at the very beginning, it was in the spring of 2020 when we started hiking together, he said to me that we had just lived through the best time ever to be alive, because he knew that the world had changed forever. It was never going to go back to the way it was. Now, since then, a full 5 years later, he has realized that these are necessary changes, that these are good things, and that we are currently still living in the best time ever to be alive. So even though back then it felt like a bit of a doomsday kind of statement, which it did feel, it doesn't feel like that anymore to me, which I am so grateful for that. The illusions are cracking, and we need to look at them as a gift. So here's a couple questions to ask yourself about that. Where was I asleep in my own life before all of this started? And I would say, even though I had all this brilliant stuff growing up with my parents, there were a lot of things that still shook me awake during 2020. A lot of things that I had just kind of settled into a rhythm, and I accepted things that I now realize that, you know, I was probably participating on some level in it. Okay, so where was I asleep in my own life before all of this started? And then this, what illusions have I let go of, and which ones am I still attached to? That is such a good question, right? What are some of the illusions that I might be still attached to and not willing to let go of? You know, sit down with these in a quiet space and really, really ask yourself. Okay, so the third thing is we need to realize that some of these systems that are trying to control us, they might tighten up before they loosen up. They might tighten up before they get better, because this is the way it goes. The systems that try to control us are going to hold on tighter. They're going to get louder. They're going to get more chaotic. Okay, we need to remember that, and we need to not only be proactive, but we need to find a way to not only be okay with what's happening, because we to the depths of who we are know the outcome, that everything's going to be okay, that love and light and good always wins. I believe that with every fiber of my being. So we need to find amusement in it. We need to stay proactive, do all the stuff, but we need to find the amusement, because that also raises the consciousness of the collective if we're not in the depths of despair, right? So we're seeing it. If you see it, like I'm still getting stuff censored. I had another video I did with Dr. Nielsen probably 4 or 5 years ago that YouTube pulled off, and I've been trying to find it. So the censorship is still happening, even though you think, okay, now they're letting us talk about certain things, and when people used to have to censor themselves about different things happening with COVID, those aren't censored anymore. There is still censorship happening, okay? So censorship, I think there's the algorithms are being still manipulated. They're putting us in these bubbles where we're only seeing what we're interested in. And then there's still fear-based policies and politics. There's still fear-based stuff being thrown around. It's all on purpose, okay? And this to me are these systems of they want to control us are being tightened on us. But the tighter the grip, the more people will start to notice it. So we need to remember that. Those of us who see it, we don't need to be disturbed by it. We need to opt out of the things. You know, I use cash as much as possible. I think it's really important to keep cash moving. Stuff like that, right? The more pressure there is, the more that there will be people that will awaken, okay? So here's a couple of questions. Am I blindly trusting systems that don't value me as a whole human? That's a good question to ask yourself. Are you blindly, look at the things that you're doing and the systems that you're still trusting. There might be a serious blind spot because it's uncomfortable. Okay? And then this question, what subtle ways am I giving away my freedom without even realizing it? We can all do something that makes a difference in our own lives for our own freedom. Because for me, freedom is important. It's the most important thing. I don't want to be surveilled. We're all under a certain amount of surveillance already. And I don't like that. So I'm going to do everything I can to maintain my sovereignty and my freedom. And in the meantime, I'm going to be a little bit amused by stuff so that I don't dive into despair, right? Or victimhood. Okay, so this is where it led into the next one. You are not a victim, you are a creator. I say this all the time. I say this in almost every Sunday message that I jump on. We can choose to be a victim or we can choose to be a creator. Okay? Okay, here's the thing we need to realize, that real pain does exist. Okay? But the story we have, it doesn't have to stop at the pain. The pain that we have, the pain that we feel, we don't have to stop our story there. When you dive into victim mentality, you are stopping your story at pain. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay? This is what I believe happens to people that dive and stay in victimhood. This is where it feels comfortable for them. It feels comfortable, and maybe they get attention, or maybe that's just their comfort zone. Okay. So our power begins when the excuses end. This is where we get to until you realize this, and start really shrugging off the victim cloak. You don't really understand how you're giving your power away. So here's a couple of questions to ask yourself. Am I living like life is happening to me or through me? Life is happening through me. It's not happening to me. I get to make the choices. I get all the choices. Even when something bad happens, I get to choose how I respond to it. Always, in every situation. It does not matter what it is or how hard it is. We get to choose. We are the ones. And then the second question, what am I avoiding by staying in the victim mentality? What is it that I'm avoiding? Do I not want to take radical responsibility for myself, my choices, my decisions, the way my life turns out? You need to ask yourself that question, okay? Then the next thing we need to remember, and again, I love this, and I say it all the time, but it's so true. You are a divine spark. Pure consciousness, pure love. Every day we forget it. And sometimes I would tell you, it gets easier and easier and easier when you just walk in that, and that every situation. In fact, here's something, this is so silly. So I have my teapot. It's an electric teapot. It sits on the counter in the corner of the kitchen. And we have this nice big kitchen. There's 2 or 3 corners and a big center island. And in one corner, it's been mine for years and years and years. My electric teapot lives there, and all my vitamins live there, and my supplements and stuff. And so I choose from during the day. It's a perfect place for it. Well, earlier this week, my husband, we got a new juicer, and it lived next to one of the other appliances on the counter next to my teapot, just for the couple of days that we had it. And then my husband this week he unplugged my teapot and moved it to the other side of where this is my routine. These are where my vitamins are. This is my corner. And this is the interesting thing. Not too long ago, I would have been totally bothered by that little thing. And he just said, he didn't even ask me, I'm moving your teapot over to this side, to this plug, because now that we have this new juicer, there's no room for your teapot. It's awkward. And I was like, okay. I mean, I know that is a very simple example of something that could it's reached this point where you just realize, what does it matter? And what does it matter? I'm so lucky I have this beautiful new juicer and I have this amazing electric teapot. You can go into grateful mode over victim mode every day of the week. I'm not quite sure how I got that out of we are a divine spark of pure consciousness and pure love. But we need to realize we're not broken and we're not just this body, okay? We are eternal presence in this suit, this meat suit, this physical body. We are an eternal presence. And how easily we forget, We were born worthy, and we remain so always, regardless of what we've done or not done. Regardless. If you stay in victim mentality till your last breath, and then you have that transition moment, and you have this, oh wow. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter what you've done or what you've not done. It doesn't change what you are, okay? So here's a couple of questions to ask yourself. Do I actually believe I'm enough without proving anything? Do you actually believe that? And then ask yourself this: when did I first forget who I really was? Can you pin it down to the time when you convinced yourself that you weren't worthy? Maybe this was something that was part of your childhood from when you were really tiny. You never really understood that you were a pure spark of divine consciousness and pure love. Maybe you were never told that. Maybe you can even get this in religious growing up. You can grow up in a religion that will give you some self-worth. You can grow up with parents that give you that, in a culture that gives you that. You could have a teacher in school that gave you that sense of worth to that level, or maybe gave you maybe that's the moment when you didn't think you were worthy. Like, there's always there can be a moment for all of us when we think, maybe it was when your parents divorced, or something, a girlfriend or boyfriend broke your heart and made you feel not. Maybe that was the moment that you realized, I'm not worthy. Can you pin it down to what was the moment when you decided you weren't worthy, right? To me, that is really a beautiful question. Okay, and then this one. This is not the end, this is a rebirth. All of this stuff going on. So if you can look at it like that, the art of amusement. This is not the end. This is just a rebirth. We get to be here to experience the shift in what the world is looking like. And this is why I really would suggest you listen to that interview with Catherine Austin Fitz, because she talks about there comes around every 10,000, 12,000, however many years, when there's kind of a reboot and systems need to change and upgrade. We all know that our education system is broken. We all know the financial system is so corrupt and so broken. We all know our political system. There's so many things that need a reboot and a rebirth. So this is not the end. This is a rebirth, and we get to be a part of it. We get to witness it and experience it. Okay? So things are collapsing so that the truer things can emerge. So that something true can emerge. Something true can emerge out of these things that are, but the powers that be are going to hold on. And so we need to hold on. We just need to hold on. Hold on through it. Let the old die. That's what I wrote. Let what doesn't belong fall away. Let it fall away. You can't walk into the new world carrying old stuff. You can't walk into this new world with your old luggage, your old baggage. You've got to have this rebirth along with it. Okay? So here's a couple questions to ask yourself. What am I still trying to resurrect that's already dead? Oh, that's a good one, right? What are you still trying to rekindle and what are you still holding on to that's already done? It's already dead. And then this, if this is a rebirth, who am I choosing to become? If this is really a rebirth, What are you choosing? Okay. And then this, let joy be your rebellion. Can you stay happy through all of this? Okay. Laughing and having joy and humor and amusement is resistance. When you make your life about play, I think play is sacred. I have a really good friend. I've known her since she was 16, and I believe she's 40 or 41 now. This girl knows how to play. Food makes her joyful. Hiking makes her joyful. Her kids make her joyful. Life makes this girl joyful. And I don't know anyone like her. And to her, play is sacred. And it made me think of her when I wrote that. Okay, play is sacred. When we choose joy in the face of chaos, we need to remember it's not about avoiding the chaos, but it's about choosing joy. It's how we remember that we're alive. We choose joy during the chaos. It reminds us that we are alive. Because I think sometimes we forget. We get so caught up in all the crap, right? So here's a couple questions to ask yourself. When did I stop letting myself play? And have I made mistakes? Have I mistaken seriousness for wisdom? Now that is a brilliant question. Have I mistaken the art of being serious for having wisdom? You know, that one came in because you think, oh, I'm serious. I'm all serious because of all the stuff going on in the world. I'm showing wisdom. I don't think that's true. I think sometimes it might be true, but I think most of the time, for most of us, that's just not true. Okay, the next one. Amidst all this chaos, I think we have the opportunity to choose wonder. We can look at this and go, wow, look at what we're experiencing. Choose wonder. Like a kid experiencing something for the first time. You know, you take a kid on a hike that has a waterfall at the end. In fact, this friend I was talking about that she loves, she considers this life play. She took me for the first time to this hike that I love because I met her so long ago. This is still one of my favorite hikes. And this hike goes up further, but where this actually ends, where I go most of the time, there's a beautiful, beautiful waterfall. And I remember the first time I went there with her, and I've been on this hike now hundreds of times. It's a beautiful, beautiful hike, and it's close to the mouth of one of the canyons. It's easy to get to. It's good I can get up on a Thursday morning and go up early and do this hike, and it's just brilliant. But the first time I went there, I remember seeing this waterfall, and it took my breath away. The sense of wonder. And I think we need to look at all this chaos and keep our sense of wonder, right? So here's what I wrote about that. So the world might be a mess, but have you seen a sunrise or a sunset lately? That never ceases to take my breath away. I've always been a sunset and a sunrise junkie. And the place in the home that I live in sits in a place of the Salt Lake Valley where I have out my front window, I have a perfect view of the Wasatch Mountains where the sun rises. And out opposite of the back of the house is the Ochre Mountains where the sun goes down. And I am constantly in a state of awe at the beauty of the sunrise and the sunset. So these are the things that we need to take a moment and keep the wonder going. So not only that, then I wrote this. Besides a sunrise or sunset, a child laughing. Like if you ever run across a little video clip of babies laughing, that I will tell you the joy that brings is amazing, right? And then I wrote this because I've lately been a person who's like, if I walk past a mirror and the lighting is terrible, like I have a really nice setup here. I've got these lights I turn on. It puts me in the best light for my age and all that stuff. So there are times I'll walk past a mirror and the lighting is horrible, or it just is what it is, and I'll just kind of go, okay. So then this is where I'm learning to find amusement, Because then I wrote, can you find your own strength in the mirror? I think that's a good question for all of us, right? And then we need to realize that the magic has not left. The magic is still here, right? We've just been trained to ignore it. We've been trained to not pay attention to it. Instead, we're looking at our phone, we're being distracted by the way a person's driving and annoyed and all that stuff. But the magic is still here. It still exists. It's in every moment if you just find it. So here's a couple questions to ask yourself. When was the last time you let yourself feel awe, a sense of awe, and not anxiety? When was the last time you let yourself feel that? You know? And then this question, what would happen if you focused on beauty instead of doom? Instead of the doom and gloom, how would your life shift if you felt yourself going into doom or gloom about anything, any situation, whatever that may be, but instead you found the beauty in it? That's amazing, right? And then this section. It's okay to feel. This is what we need to remember. And it's okay to get up out of bed anyway. It's okay to feel, and it's okay to get up out of bed anyway. Okay? You don't have to wait until you're healed, right, to move forward. Emotions are sacred, but so is action. Okay? And then I wrote this. The trick is not to bypass your feelings. The trick is not to let yourself drown in them. Don't bypass your feelings. Sit with them, feel them, give them grace. Really feel them, release them. Don't let yourself drown in them. That takes you back to the victim mentality, right? So here's the questions to ask yourself. Am I avoiding my emotions, or am I addicted to them? Okay? And then what would healing look like if it didn't mean fixing, just feeling? What does healing really look like? If it doesn't mean fixing your emotions, it just means feeling them, not fixing them. It's just like when and this is a man and woman thing, I think it's very typical, even though I know there are outliers on this, but I have to sometimes preface something I'm going to tell my husband with, I'm just going to tell you something, and I just want to tell you, I don't need you to fix anything. And because there's been many times because you just learn by trial and error that this is, a lot of times a man wants to help. They want to help you fix something. They want to make things better. My husband is completely like that. And I'm grateful for that. But I have to sometimes preface him. I have to say, I have this thing that happened. It's really emotional for me. And I just want to share it with you. And I don't need you to fix anything. So sometimes you have to give grace in situations like that, right? Okay? And then there's 3 more. Love is not just the answer. I am all about love because love is the foundation. It's not just the answer. It is the foundation. Love, love, love. Pure, unconditional love, right? Real love is not fluffy. It's not squishy. I think real love is fierce and strong. This is what I think real love is, okay? Real love speaks the truth. I listened to a really good podcast. I believe it was Jillian Michaels. I didn't listen to all of it. I listened to a short bit of it this week. And I always get some great listening into some of the stuff when I'm on my walk. I have a long walk that takes me about an hour and a half. And she was talking about how when you care about somebody, you're going to say things that are hard truths. And you're going to say them with kindness and love and whatever. But that's kind of what it broke. What broke through for me is real love isn't fluffy, it's fierce, and it speaks the truth. So real love speaks truth. It does it kindly, okay? It restores dignity. Real love with truth, it restores the dignity to ourselves and the ones we love, right? Love is what remains when everything else falls away. I had a texting conversation with my sister who's pulled away. It was very short because I tried to just engage her with the idea of love when we disagree politically or whatever. And it failed. It was a big fail. But as far as, she kind of just cut me off. But that's okay. It's still love. It's still pure love, because she really didn't have much to come back at when I said these political views aren't important. What's important is the love we have. Is love. Love is important. That's what's important. And it's okay. It's her own journey. It's her own thing. So then we need to ask ourselves these questions. Do I lead with love or with control? Right? And then this, what version of love have I accepted that isn't real love at all? So there's a difference between a love that we think is love or we've accepted as love, but it's really not. Now that's a great question to ask yourself about love, because love is the foundation of everything. All right, the second from the last. Pause and breathe, right? We need to let gratitude ground us. Because this is where I think we find amusement and joy and happiness and love. We need to start bringing humor and happiness back, right? We need to let gratitude ground us, because then everything falls away. You ground yourself in gratitude, and I think we can be amused at some of the situations we find ourselves caught in that starts us to spiral into victimhood or despair or depression or whatever it is, okay? So in all this noise that is this chaos in this world, what gratitude does is it brings us back to center. It brings us back. It's like I wrote that list of everyone I was grateful for that have been just steady pillars in my life. And this took up a whole page, and I actually went back the whole week and I wrote another person's name as they came up. If I'd forgotten them because I hadn't seen them in a while, or I hadn't seen them in years, or whatever. So gratitude is a really powerful reminder. It can bring us back to a grounding and can bring back a sense of amusement. Like, I really have to tell you, I love that idea so much, because we are so freaking serious and we just don't need to be, right? We think seriousness is wisdom, and it's most of the time it's not. Okay, so here's a question that you could ask yourself. What am I overlooking because I'm too focused on what is missing? Because gratitude always brings you back to what you have, right? And then ask this, can I feel gratitude and grief at the same time? And I wrote that because I remember very clearly, my mom came in really beautifully this week. Just her presence, I think maybe because we're close to Mother's Day, and my mom was such an amazing woman. I talk about my dad so much, and my mom was just this most positive soul that was just, she was just amazing. Like, I guess you can't have, my mom had 11 kids, we adopted 3, but you can't be a woman who gives birth to 11 children and raises 14 kids and not be the most spectacular soul that ever walked the earth, right? So my mom came in a ton. So when I thought about her this week, and she was 74 when she passed, she had MS for 4 decades, and her life, she could have been a victim her whole life as she dealt with this disease. And she wasn't. She never was. So when she passed, and even the life that looked so hard to me and my siblings that she lived with her physical, disabilities that MS gave her, the gratitude and the grief went hand in hand. So the answer to that question for me is 100% yes. We can feel gratitude and grief at the same time. All right? It reminds us, what gratitude does, it reminds us of what's still true. Okay? Even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. Gratitude can still bring us back to center. And then this is the very last one. We need to see the good, and we need to be the good. Because when you see the good in everything, everything changes. No matter what's happening in your life, no matter what hard things you're going through. I've had really interesting, very difficult business things happen this past year and a half, and things are not wrapped up. I don't know what it's going to look like. But my thing is, I'm going to see the good in everything. And I've already actually had, there's some really deep kind of private journaling that I've had the past couple weeks, that these beautiful realizations have dropped into me, and some things that have made me grateful for the hard things that I've gone through. So I can still see the good in everything, and then be good, be the good, okay? So the world does not change through arguments. It changes through embodiment. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to have an argument with my sister. I'm not going to engage in it. I'm not going to engage in an argument. I'm going to embody pure unconditional love. And that's the best way to walk through the world, right? And with not just her, but all the stuff, all the things, all the people, all the situations, everything, okay? Be what we crave, okay? We need to be what we crave. What do we crave? What do we want? What is it that we're just hungry for in this world? Love, financial abundance, good relationships. Be that. Be the responsible financial person. Be the person who brings 100% of unconditional love to every relationship. Not 50% and expect them to meet you at 50. Bring 100%. Be what you crave. What is it that you crave? Be that. Be that. Okay? Be what is missing. Be what's real. That's how we build the new. And then these two questions. Am I modeling the world I want to live in, or just criticizing the one I don't? Do you model the world that you want to live in, or are you just criticizing all the stuff that's broken? All the stuff you don't like about the world, do you just spend your time criticizing? That's a powerful question. Okay? And then what good can I offer that no one else can? What's something that you can offer? Here's one thing: your smile, your presence, your conversation. No one else can offer that because there's only one you. Right? Oh, so much to look at and think about and just revel in with a sense of amusement. You know, I really, really loved that. I loved the whole thought of bringing just joy, amusement, and humor and gratitude and love all back while we go through these times. You know, it's still surprising to me, the people that I interact with, that they think the world's just normal like it was 5 years ago, and they're still, you know, still complain about the systems that they're watching that aren't serving. It's just so fascinating to me. So I'd love to know what you think about this. You know, did any of these really jump out at you and resonate with you? You know, I'd love to hear what they are. But here we are in May, guys, May of 2025. So I hope you have an absolute brilliant, full first week of May. Enjoy the spring, especially if you're living in a place that gets nice, cold, deep winters like me, where everything's blooming. And we just planted our vegetables the past couple days, which is just so satisfying. But thanks for tuning in today, guys. I hope you have a brilliant, brilliant week, and we will see you next week.